Hey, and welcome to the Change Leaders Playbook, bringing you all things delivery and leadership in a podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chris Meyer, who's an entrepreneur, an educator, and he's helped thousands of people change their lives by teaching them the skills and the mindsets needed to thrive in the future. Now, Chris's background is in AI, and he firmly believes that AI should make us more human and not less. Chris has a PhD, he's a graduate PhD, and he coaches senior leaders to help them understand how AI can support their vision of their organizations. He started the School of Code, which educates many thousands of individuals and transforms their careers through intensive bootcamp education in software development. He founded Mia Labs, which is an AI product and ideas factory, and also he helps senior leaders and organizations adapt to the opportunities that AI brings. So with that, it's really my pleasure to say welcome to Chris. Chris, hi.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, glad to be chatting, Cliff.
Yeah, no problem. And, you know, again, I've said this before, but I've been looking forward to this for a while. So yeah, hope you have too. Good to meet you again.
Yeah, it's been, when you were just saying it's probably about a year since we spoke at the AI Accelerator. So yeah, time flies. God, life changes.
Yeah, indeed. So why don't we start off by just saying what have you been up to over the past year or so then with yourself? Because looking at your profile again, it keeps changing. There's always something new going on. So it'd be good to just find out what's the last year been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I say it a lot now. I basically just get to play with AI all day. So that's my job title, if you like, or my role, which I tidy up a little bit if anyone asks me and I want to sound more important, but yeah, just play with AI all day is a good place to be. And getting back to my roots, like you said, my background is AI. And then I took, the last 10 years running School of Code to try and help people beat what I saw was the cliff edge of automation that was really going to impact a lot of people's lives. But always wanted to get back to AI and playing around with it because it's just, it's magic. I love it. There's a lot of hype and a lot of cynical doom and gloom and, loads of mixed, which is great because actually like 10, 15 years ago, I couldn't even get anyone interested to talk about AI. And the difference now is, well, everyone's talking about it all the time. Now that's going to bring loads of weird and wonderful opinions, but that's a much better place than actually, I used to go to people and talk about AI, and in the end, all they really wanted was a website or, just some standard software. Is now actually people have they've caught the bug. Their imagination is running away with them, which is if we use it well, it's a great place to be. So yeah, for the last year, building with AI, helping, like you said, leaders and organizations get to grips with it, because a lot of people still don't really know what AI is and they feel like it's too late for them to ask, and they've been told by their boards to have an AI strategy, and they're just like, well, I don't even how can I have a strategy with something that I'm not sure what it actually is. And so I really enjoy taking people through that process of like just showing them under the hood. This stuff is not that complicated. It's actually, you can build a real intuition in a short space of time. And that helps you as you move forward to make, countless decisions at pace, because you've just got that intuitive understanding rather than pretending like what AI is because you feel like everyone else does, which is very rarely the case. So yeah, playing around with AI a lot, which I've enjoyed.
Yeah, that is, I think it's one of those things. We've got to an inflection point now, really, where people were scared of AI, felt it was irrelevant. And even in my line of business, I'm hearing now that, businesses want an AI strategy. They need help with their AI strategy, and they actually need to ensure that they can actually present the value that it brings, not just doing it for the sake of it. So how can we turn AI into real value creation? And I think there's been a big shift over the past even 18 months, to be quite frank, in terms of how people perceive it and the possibilities that it can bring. So yeah, the world is changing for sure.
Yeah. And I think, on that point, until you've got an intuition of what this stuff is and what it can do and what the why behind it, like why would we use it in these places? I think you're always just going to, every problem is a nail and you've got a hammer. Like you're just going to say, well, let's try AI here, let's try AI there, and it's, that's the wrong way to to sort of view it. Um, and so I do think that literacy, that AI literacy, is a big piece that's missing. Um, and yeah, I've seen that have a huge impact over the last couple of months, especially. But what have you seen in your world? So do you think people generally know what AI is, or do you think they've got an inkling, or do you think they've just not got a clue? Or every world is different, right?
Yeah, good question. I think people were initially apprehensive, and now they have an idea of what they think AI can do, not necessarily what it is. So it's more a case of, well, I've heard this company has been able to reduce or increase productivity by 20, 30% because they've actually stopped doing lots of slide decks and manual research, and actually pay for some subscriptions for a good model to do most of it for them, and then they change their own way of working to become now almost curators and thinkers and directors rather than doers, so to speak. So people are starting to wake up to that. And then what I'm also seeing is that it's not always about, okay, can we use AI to replace humans? I do really think that companies are genuinely thinking about how can we accelerate, almost use it to supercharge humans, because we still need people. But actually we can do more with the same headcount, for example. So how do we do that? Because if we don't do it, our competitors will do it and we'll be left behind. So I think that almost that fear of missing out is now starting to creep in across industries, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and that's really where I feel comfortable with everyone aiming. Like, I think that is the aim that we want, isn't it? Because efficiency, if you said efficiency in business, like, it usually means cost cutting and inward looking, and and actually efficiencies are a great lever for growth. Like, if you can free up these people over here to not have to do 50, 60, 70% of what they're doing, they've got a load of time now and effort to pour into another value add direction. But the great thing about the people that you've got is, they know the culture, they've got the relationships, they live and breathe there's a load of inherent value. And I think that's what I try and encourage companies to see, actually. Be open with your people, because everyone's scared about AI taking jobs. I think if you're open and transparent with what your vision for AI actually means, people will accept it. They're not silly. They understand things change and they have to adapt. But one of the really cool things is most companies in fact, every company that I've worked with and talked to, have said, well, we're not really looking to reduce headcount at all. Like, we're really focused on freeing people up from low value tasks so that they can pour themselves into high value tasks and just add more value, which is definitely the right way to think about it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny because I've not too long ago I heard Meta, so Mark Zuckerberg was talking about that very same thing. They're investing heavily in data centers and creating new AI capability, but still looking to increase headcount at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not at the same rate, but because his view was, actually, if I can now make each individual worth more just by sort of supporting them with AI, why would I stop recruiting? Surely
Exactly.
that means the more people I recruit, the more value I can create for my organization. And that's a really good way of looking at it, which I don't think too many people have thought about. So yeah, very good.
Yeah. And for me, it depends how you approach it, because AI this is really general, right? But AI gets you about 80% of the way there for any task. Like, it's really good now compared to what we thought it could be. It's magic in some ways, but it's also underwhelming because 80% isn't 100%, right? So, the key to AI is the same as the key to a happy marriage, and it's just low expectations. Like, if you lower your expectations, you'll love it. You'll be fine. So for me, actually, most people are trying to go from 80 to 100%. AI gets them 80% of the way there, and then they're in this frustrating, they seem to be sinking a load of time and effort and tears into trying to get AI to be 100% of what they need. which is why their work just intensifies. Like AI doesn't seem to be freeing them up really in any meaningful way sometimes. Um, Whereas for me, it's actually more productive sometimes to take a step back and say, okay, where are we currently doing zero that AI could jolt us to 80% and that actually be valuable? Like you said, like meeting prep. Like, I don't prep for meetings much if I can help it. But if AI can go and do it for me, well, that's better than my 0% effort. Do you know what I mean? Just having it go and scour and give me a few. Oh, great! Like that is much better than trying to get the AI to completely replace a human being, which it just isn't capable of right now. There's no coherent thought process behind it. It's magic, but there is a lot lacking in the sort of large language models and neural network approach. I think it will get there one day, but I definitely think, those expectations need to be set. And that also gives you just immense power to say, well, where is that now useful? We can just scan the whole organization and see, well, where can I free up half an hour here, or where do we get this additional value that we've never been able to get before?
I was interested to find out what are the types of questions you get asked by organizations, leaders. What are they most concerned about? What are the sorts of challenges that they look to you to kind of help them to address?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd say, if I'm honest, the most common state that people come with is just not having a clue, really. Like not even knowing what questions to ask. Um, that's a really common thing because, and I think that's understandable because it's the type of phrase AI that is talked about so much that you just expect everyone else has got it figured out. It's like in life, you go through life and you think everyone's got it figured out. And then one day you realize actually they're all just making it up as they go along. Like nobody, nobody really has anything figured out. Everyone's just making it up as they go along, doing their best, blah, blah, blah. And I think people are coming to that realization with AI. There are some people that are really loud about their wins and the case studies, which is great. But, at the same time, I bet if you dig into that, there's a load of things that they're just misunderstanding or not applying. So I think everyone should be a little bit more lenient on themselves. Like, this stuff is moving really quickly. And actually, sometimes it's not worth over investing up front if it is going to move quickly and you're still figuring out what your trajectory is at the same time. So I think most companies are about where they need to be. Like, there's no huge panic. It feels like a panic. There is no huge panic. You can get to grips with this stuff quite easily. You can apply it really intelligently, and you can get a ton of value from it. But the number one thing that I say to companies is just being there is the main. Like, you come in and saying, "Well, I'm not sure about AI. I don't really know how to apply it to our strategy or vision, or if I should just be putting it into everything." And each company is different. But asking those questions, like not having a clue, just saying, well, where now? Like, where do we start? That's actually the main barrier, I think. So more specifically, I think I try and get people imagining what their vision for a company is. If they just had a magic wand, like if anything was possible, anyone could do anything, what does your company still do? And that sort of gets to the heart of like, what's not going to change? Like Jeff Bezos is, what's not going to change for him at Amazon. I think it was something like, customers will always want faster delivery and they'll always want lower prices. Do you know what I mean? So if we aim for those things, we're never really going to be irrelevant. We're not really going to have to, nobody's ever going to come to us and say, oh, your prices are too low. Or, oh, I wish that delivery would have taken longer. So what's the equivalent for, your business? That's not really an AI question. That's just a strategic alignment question of your vision and values and what you want to deliver for your customers. What do they actually want? But putting it front and center allows you to then build strategies and delegate decision making to all of the experimenters in your organization, which for me is like everyone working now is part of that experimental team. Like, they've got on the ground view of how AI can help them. They just need license and a sandbox to play in. And if everyone's in that experimental mode, you've suddenly got 50, 100, 10,000, however many employees you've got so much more innovation happening in your company rather than a top-down strategy of like, okay, here's exactly where we're going to go. That doesn't really work anymore anyway, but especially with AI and the pace of change. If you can get all of your employees energized and experimenting with how this could help automate or improve their work, I think you're in dreamland, really. So yeah, I think those types of things, like, apply it to the vision. And so once you set that vision, it's really easy to then say to people in your organization, well, you can come and tell us when you think AI is relevant, because you can make a decision quite easily. You say, does it help us get there? If it doesn't, then maybe it's a distraction, because you're going to get distracted by 1,000 new AI apps a week, right? Like they're going to keep coming out. You're going to keep hearing, you've got salespeople for every one of those pieces of software telling you it is the solution to all of your aches and pains. But if you can just say, okay, well, does it help us get there? If not, maybe it's a distraction. Doesn't mean we don't do it, but we can consider it now, in terms of like, how much time and effort is it going to be? But if it helps us get there, that helps us get to the thing that we're saying is never going to change, then we can just adopt an experiment, and that, when you are inundated with so much information, actually analysis paralysis is one of the hardest things to get over, because you don't want to make the wrong decision. But how can you evaluate 100 new apps? It's just impossible. And there is there's no heritage in this, world. Like, everything's about 3 years old, it seems, at the very most. So I think those types of strategies where you just say, right, what is actually not going to change? Let's focus on that first, and let's build backwards from there. And now everything facilitates us getting to exactly what we said is the most important thing to our customers, and what isn't going to change for our customers.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, because ultimately most businesses have a function or service that they're providing, and that service doesn't go away just because AI is here. Their purpose should still be their purpose, and then it should be a case of how do they use the tools around them to still deliver on what the objectives of that organization are in the best way possible.
And Cliff, sometimes when you ask that question, like, what isn't going to change? If what is going to change is directly what you do, then it's really good to answer that question now, because it's like, okay, we think that's going to change. Well, let's reinvent ourselves now. Like, let's have a think about how can we lean into something that is, longer term or more stable, or always going to be of need or value. Because I think some companies will be in that position where they're not asking themselves that question, and they'll get disrupted very quickly. So I think all companies, it's a really easy question to ask. It's actually very little to do with AI. It just roots you in what's the actual value that you want to deliver. Especially for smaller organizations, you've got so much ownership over your direction. You don't just have to do things. You can really think, what lifestyle do I want to live? What do I want to add to the world? It's quite hard for large organizations to get a consensus across like 10,000 people or whatever. But if you're a small organization, it's probably the best time to have ever been alive in some ways, because you've just got that real ownership and agency to say, well, let me analyze what value I want to add to the world. How do I get there with the current resources? And that ability has just been exploded with AI. If you break things down and separate them in the right way, AI can really supercharge those organizations to punch well above their weight, which we're seeing all the time.
It's a good point, because it can also create opportunities. So first of all, you've got the survival aspect to make sure that you're still relevant. Then also, now that there's new technology within AI, what new opportunities does it create us as almost as an adjacent to our existing business model to help us to thrive elsewhere where previously we perhaps wouldn't have been able to?
Yeah, perfect. What does it help us? What does it help us do better that we're already doing? Quicker, faster, cheaper, whatever. And what does it help us do that we've never been able to do before, like we've never even thought about before? And a lot of, it's always a surprise to me, just when I look back at things, like everything is a product of where it started. Do you know what I mean? So if you were going to reinvent something today, you'd probably take a completely different path to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And business is no different. Like, you start a business in an environment at a certain point in time. You have to make a certain amount of hedging bets and just deal with whatever's there. So most systems have just it's like a garden and you have to prune it and weed it every so often. Um, AI gives you the ability to reinvent some things that you just never would have been able to think of before because they were not possible. And actually, I think that's some of the most valuable stuff. Again, it gets you from 0 to 80. Like, you're at 0 there because it was never possible before. You can get to 80 really quickly now. And, um, you're not following that. Sometimes it's a bit of fool's gold to search for that 100% right. AI is 100% going to replace that. You need AGI to replace human beings. We are not at AGI in my definition of the word. And so rather than chasing that, which plenty of people are doing, actually there is plenty of value to add in the meantime for most people.
What would you say are the most essential skills that workers really should be looking towards now? Clearly, I think we would both agree that shying away from the use of AI, where in industries where it's been adopted, is probably not the best idea. But there are probably some skills that people like you and I, or people who work in an office or other types of jobs, may need to open themselves up to stay relevant. What would you say they might be? And they could be interpersonal skills or just a mindset of being able to learn, for example.
Yeah, I think you just answered that question. Like the things, I think on a similar point to what we've just discussed, the things that aren't going to change, like interpersonal skills, like you're always going to you're always going to want to work with people. Like you just now, maybe one day that won't be necessary, to be honest, but I think it will always be a part because otherwise we're all isolated little batteries. I don't know what we are, so you're always going to want to be in the middle of people. That's going to take self-awareness. That's going to take collaboration skills, communication skills. So those things aren't really going to change. And where you're entering this world where there seems to be constant change, I actually think leaning into learning is a superpower, and it always has been. And, but it's, especially over the last 20 years, it's become way more important because no matter what job you're doing today, 20 years ago, that job looked very different, right? Even without AI, you're just probably using a ton more software. You're having to focus on a ton more different directions, different skills. So you're having to learn anyway. Now that's going to be taken up a notch because, you're just going to be bombarded with change and information. So leaning into learning is the key thing that just won't change. Like if you are a skilled learner, like if you're confident that you could be thrown into a situation and learn and cope with it, I think that is a superpower for the future and one that everyone needs. So yeah, I'd try again and sit back and picture, well, I try not to tell people to focus on like this hot skill right now, or these top 10 prompt engineering hacks or whatever. Like they don't interest me. Like I'm not saying they're not useful. There's plenty of people that are really good at delivering those. And for me, I always like to go 1 or 2 levels deeper, or just take a step back and say, well, what isn't going to change it? What's the why behind that? What isn't going to change there? And let's aim for that, because that is that's the value, right? That's the real value we want to aim for. And I think everything you said sums that up. So is anyone doing it well, in particular? So, well, I think I do. Some of the frontier labs are doing some amazing things with, what I think is quite a really simple technology. Like if you think about like predicting the next word, it's like, it doesn't sound that impressive, but you chain these things together. And language is so magical, there's, and more than that, the human production of language has been so magical. We've got so many examples of great writing and blogs and weird tweets. And, you just think about how much is out there to train on. And it just so happens when you predict the next word, what you're actually doing is predicting the next step in a thought process. Because whenever somebody's written something or created something, the words aren't just babbled out most of the time, apart from when I speak. Usually there's a really coherent thought process that has gone into it. And so if you're training machines to predict the next word, it's like a proxy for the thought process. And that's why they trick us into thinking, they are basically human. Because whenever you've read words before, there's no other time in history that you've read a word and it wasn't produced by a human. So your brain doesn't know how to cope with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if you know these machines are, here's the algorithm, here's how it works, here's why it's stupid, here's why it's great, blah, blah, blah. Like, you cannot read what is produced and not feel like there's a human on the other, like an intelligence on the other side of it. So what these frontier labs are doing is incredible. I think they're overhyping it, but that always happens in AI. Like, there's cycles of AI summer or spring. Sometimes it's called, I like calling it summer. AI summer when, it happened in the 50s and 60s and the 80s and 90s. People get really excited about the potential for AI, right? Because it's so tantalizing, right? And it always feels so close. And so what happens is a load of money and opportunity and talent floods into the industry because people want to be part of that vision. And we always drive loads of progress in these AI summers. But what happens generally is there's an AI winter that follows where the hype wasn't met by reality. Do you know what I mean? Like, the promise was nobody's ever going to have to do any more housework. And the reality was, well, we get meeting minutes taken for us or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that has always happened throughout history. We've had 2 or 3 cycles of AI summer, AI winter. Is winter coming? I don't know. Like, this time might be different because the core proposition of AI today is scale, like scale of computing. Everyone's now thinking that's a bit of a dead end in the long run. I'm not so sure. I think if you had infinite compute, you might be able to do pretty incredible things still. So I still think there's a lot of performance to eke out from purely scaling up these machines. But that's essentially all that's happened. Like, the same techniques that have been around for many, many years have now just had the supercharge of massive compute ability. And we're seeing the fruits of that. So these AI labs are doing some pretty impressive stuff, but at the same time, I think are overhyping slightly in an unhelpful way. And this is from someone that, like, I've been a hype man for AI for like longer than I can remember. Like, the reason I started School of Code was because I thought I just couldn't see past the cliff edge of automation for people's jobs. I was like, one day AI is going to be able to do everything a human could do. Until then, jobs are going to require much more learning and much more technical ability, like understanding what tech is, how to use it. And so that's why School of Code was there to help people transition really quickly, learn really quickly, and adapt to technology. But fundamentally, because one day I think AI will take all jobs. So I'm not coming from this from a AI naysayer. Like, it's, I believe AI has, the capability in the long run to do phenomenal things. I'm really interested in, will it ever be conscious? How will we have to treat it in society if it, if it is, or if it even, seems like it is? There's really interesting questions there, but fundamentally, we are nowhere near that right now. Right? We just aren't. Like, we have really impressive technology, nowhere near that. And I think that's really hard for a frontier lab to admit when they've been given billions of dollars to do that. But we are nowhere near it. So what we need to do is really grasp with the technology we've got. I'm not sure we're millions of miles away, but we're not there tomorrow or the next day unless something ridiculous happens. So sometimes I think these AI labs are, huffing their own exhaust fumes a little too much. That's easy for all of us to do. And that's why diversity of thinking and just breaking outside of your box and looking like what is in the real world is useful. That's the amazing thing about, like, working in academia. Like, in academia, it's great because it's all about ideas and, but as soon as you try and test your ideas against the real world, like, you wake up and you're like, oh, reality tells me what, you might have the most powerful AI in history, but reality might beg to differ if you apply it to a certain job role. But also, even if you do have the best AI, people need to buy into it, because if they don't, they're just going to sabotage it or not use it properly or not know how to use it effectively. And so I think my hope is that these AI labs just take it down one or two registers, and then we're in a really productive place. And they're making the noises that they are doing that as well. In terms of other companies doing well, there are some really cool apps. But I went through the last year and I think I had every premium subscription to pretty much every AI app you could think of. Please don't tell my wife and kids, because it costs a bomb. It's just ridiculous. And all of that for experimenting, because I was just like, well, I've been out of the AI world for a little bit. Like, I just want to see what's going on. If I'm honest, I've shared like 95% of that. And I just have really a Claude Code subscription, which I think is good, but you don't even need if you don't want to. Like, there's many open source versions that I've found just as good. I've got a Gemini subscription because it comes with Google Workspace. And I've really only got like one or two others. Everything else is like a little open source tool or a tool that I've made, and I've found that really freeing, actually, because otherwise you're like a rabbit in the headlight, deer in the headlights of, God, there's just so much to keep on top of. And this app does this and that app does that. And you end up treading water, just trying to, change your workflow to embed these new tools. And that isn't the promise of AI. The promise of AI, when people say AI skills should be like nothing really. It's just language that we use to interface with large language models. So if they do their job properly, there is no such thing as an AI skill to interact with it. It's a decision about where to deploy it, maybe, but if they do what they're supposed to do, you just talk and they do. It's like having a genie in the future. You speak and there's a reality that is created for you. So yeah, but we're not there. We're not there yet. So what I've done is basically shed all of those little apps and just focus on, a couple of things like Claude, Gemini, and embed them into my workflow as much as possible. I use things like Super Whisper, which is really good. Like as a dictator, so I just speak rather than type. Still trying to build that habit and muscle, because it's all a habit, but you're so much more productive when you just talk. You talk so much more than you can type. And then getting that to trigger lots of different workflows. So rather than just a dictation tool, it's trying to be a bit more like Tony Stark's lab. And you say something and it goes and happens somewhere else, and then that's the dream. So yeah.
So you've got your own Jarvis, have you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it has got Jarvis's voice actually as one of the options. But,
cool.
So yeah, but I think that is the big thing that I try and impress on companies as well. You don't have to have 1,000 subscriptions and 1,000 tools, but equally, don't feel like there's a one solution to every problem. I think if you can be, the way I phrase it is tortoise and hare. So, you can only be a hare in so many directions. And what a hare is, you have to keep in touch with like, what are the latest changes or the latest apps or the latest updates in this area. If you try and do that for all of AI, you've just had, you aren't going to run an actual business. Your full-time job will be keeping up with all those changes, most of which are uninteresting. So you can only do that in one or two directions, really. And so make sure they are where your competitive advantage is.
One of the things that came to my mind was about the Frontier Labs themselves. Many of them are private companies, right? And so they have to promise something or sell a vision so they can get the next round of funding to keep building. And I think that was probably part and parcel of the big narrative, which is promise the world and deliver only part of it. Because at some point, I think they firmly believe they're going to get there. They're going to get to AGI or even ASI, artificial superintelligence. But they know that there's stepping stones along the way. And if they were as I guess, transparent as they need to be, perhaps they wouldn't get the next round of funding to get anywhere near it.
100%.
My skepticism.
If you look at like ChatGPT and OpenAI saying that they're going to do advertising, which I've got nothing against, like advertising is the model, but I've said it since ChatGPT came out, really. These companies don't act like companies that believe AGI is around the corner. Right? Because if you did, like some companies do, like Super Safe Intelligence, or whatever it's called, Ilya's company, they've not produced anything. They're just in a bunker working on stuff. Now, that is those are the people that truly believe like they're going to hit AGI. Do you know what I mean? They're just like, right, we are right there. No distractions. Nobody's leaving this bunker. Let's get our heads down. We're going to get there first. Who knows if they're going to get there? They might be deluding themselves. I haven't heard what they're actually working on or whatever. But OpenAI is almost the opposite, because it's like, okay, so AGI is coming, all jobs are going. There's no, economics as it stands is completely turned on its head. We need new world models, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we focus some of this attention on advertising? And you'd be like, what? So you're saying AGI is around the corner, the whole world's going to change, and you're going to take some of that precious resource that you're paying so much for and say, oh yeah, and can you figure out the advertising? That's not how you just say, everyone in this company, help us push forwards towards AGI. We need to get there first. That's what we're being told. So yeah, I just don't think they act how they don't back up their talk with the actions. I sort of respect those companies more that do. But like you say, it's because really you're always selling. And if you're not selling to customers, you're selling to investors, and the investors want a big return, and you need to sell a big vision for what's coming. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. And listen, everyone might look foolish in a couple of years because they might get there, but I can't see it right now. What I can see is really useful tools and a lot more diversity of research coming over the next few years. But AGI is always tantalizing. We always imagine, and it seems so easy because intelligence comes easy to us. But they get, I mean, it's like, I suppose in one way, this brings us on to, everyone panicking about like programming disappearing and all of that. And I haven't written a line of code for, I think, over a year now. Definitely coming up to a year, but almost over a year. But I don't know if that's always saved me work. Do you know what I mean? Like, definitely sometimes, like I've done it to immerse myself in it and whatever, like these LLM coding agents, they've got better and better and better. For sure, at the start, it was absolutely painful, but a lot of those nuances you learn. But these models now are really good, but they are saying they write all the code is like saying, do you remember Dreamweaver?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It's like saying Dreamweaver wrote all the code. Well, yeah, it did, but so what? It's the syntax. What you really need is someone putting these ideas together coherently and making decisions. And you need embodied intelligence to have that matter in the real world. You don't need this sort of proxy echo of a thought process. Syntax is great to generate. And that was how we taught it at the School of Code. We said on the first day, since the first class, so this was like, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, 7 years ago. We said, look, one day AI will be able to write code, because that's what I always imagined. But, there are steps. First of all, you have to understand the problem. Then you have to break it down. Then you have to make a plan. Then you have to get to sort of pseudocode. And then you apply that plan line by line. You can generate code from it. And that's how we taught them to break down, and one day that last step will be automated. If AI ever automates anything else there, then it's game over, right? Because once AI can understand problems and generate code, it can basically solve any problem in the world, right? Like, you've got an infinite ability to write code. Even robotics, even if you weren't going to be intelligent about it, you could say, well, AI can just write infinite if statements to get that robot to pick up that mug perfectly, right? It doesn't even have to be intelligent in how it does it. Like, the limit for us is the amount of code we can write and maintain. So if you've got an AI that can write perfect code and understand problems perfectly, then there is no barrier to what you can do. The difference is, what we have is something fluent in the syntax of language, fluent in the syntax of code, and a really good communication layer. But what we're trying to do is stack on all these other layers on top. And actually, as developers and technologists, we should be used to this anyway, because it's not like I've ever written binary or machine code or even C++ much, these lower level languages um, that are taken care of for you so that you can get your head up, stand on the shoulders of giants and just solve more problems rather than being in the weeds of, okay, like there used to be holes in punch cards to feed the machine that took weeks to even run something. So you're not solving many problems if you're having to individually debug every hole in a punch card. Then you get machine code, and then you get assembly and blah blah blah. So at every point, people invent these layers that allow you to abstract to the next level, which means you can solve more problems rather than stay in the weeds. And for me, that's all AI is doing for coding right now. It's saying, right, well, I can take care of this level of the abstraction, right, which has classically been like the programming. But I don't feel like that's the interesting part. The interesting part is like, how do you solve problems? How do you understand problems? What impact can you make in the world? And for me, so if we use AI effectively, what it allows you to do is way more of that. And so I think it's a really exciting time. You still need technical knowledge. And the thing that we're going to miss over the next few years, if we keep not investing in junior talent and people coming through, we're going to miss people with the taste to understand what good looks like, because that takes years to build up, years of mistakes and years of learning from other people. Like, you need to build up that taste. And that's going to be the most important thing. When AI can just do stuff for you, then what you need is to be that, the senior chef just goes and tastes the soup, right? Is like a bit more salt. If you've never tasted soup before, you don't know whether that's a good soup or a bad soup, or is that what soup's supposed to taste like? And that's going to be the position a lot of people are in if we don't keep investing in, a technical understanding, not necessarily code, but, a technical understanding.
Yeah, that's loads in there. And I think it makes perfect sense. It does remind me of a few things that I records from. So Jensen from NVIDIA, for example, right, who's supplying the majority of the AI chips to hyperscalers and everyone, basically the world and beyond. One of the things that he said was that his intent is that at some point for there to be no need to code, and for him to never recommend anyone to get into a developer type role. That sounds quite scary, right? But he also encouraged that to be a positive thing, in that the same level of problem solving skills are still going to be required, but in a different way. Right. And so that doesn't mean that jobs are necessarily going away. It means that new opportunities are going to be created, and therefore we can use our aptitude to solve even bigger problems. But some people would love it, right? But I guess the more mundane tasks of coding and things like that may not be as necessary. However, we can still work in the industry to solve problems in a slightly different way and let AI potentially do the coding. Now, what that means then, in my mind, is that I think something back to what you said earlier on, was that appetite for compute and the appetite for more and more GPUs and whatever comes beyond that. I don't think it's ever going to stop anytime soon, because our thirst as humans for knowledge and for solving new problems is probably never going to end. Therefore, we're going to always want more. And so more data centers are going to be built, more computers are going to be needed, and more problems are going to be solved, in my view. And I think that's a positive thing, as long as we channel it in the right areas, and hopefully then the frontier labs can actually solve the problems that they are promising to solve at some point.
And I agree, definitely. But if you listen to, like, the interesting thing with large language models is the business model is per token. Right. And so how do you get more intelligence out of a large language model? Well, what we've seen is just add more tokens. Right. So that's great for the people selling tokens. And the reasoning models, and there is, actually does work, but the reasoning models, just keep piling tokens, let them do tokens themselves, and let them think. All of that is more compute. I'm not necessarily sure it always realizes more value. And I think people intuitively understand that, more noise does not mean more signal. And sometimes what you need to do is actually just get rid of everything and simplify and really understand to the root. And that's not always possible when, let's say you fully embrace AI and but in every area of your life, what you've got a summary from every area of your life. Are you even going to read it half the time? Do you know what I mean? Like you just won't even read it. Like half of that, the noise is sometimes the thing that's going to suffocate the value. Do you know what I mean? Like the amount produced suffocates the value. Some of the most beautiful things are when you just condense that perfectly into like a sentence. And so I think there will be a bit of a backlash at some point against like the need for just continuously more tokens, more tokens, more tokens. But I don't think that relates to, will we need less data centers? I think the data center thirst is, we'll have data centers on the moon, in space, they'll try and build data centers wherever they can, because I think that probably is right. We probably do have an unquenchable thirst, or at least a very large thirst for the amount of data that's going to be interesting over the next few years, especially.
What are you looking forward to over the next few years then? What are you hoping that AI can do for humanity? It's quite a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I really look forward to, I mean, part of my frustration is just that we're not there already. Like that's why sometimes I sound quite excited and then bitter, because I'm just like, I just want to be in a place where I can say, do this and it's done. Like I've never been interested in the nitty gritty detail. Like, I've always been like, okay, I want this, boom, perfectly delivered, great. So I'm interested in that coming closer and closer to reality. I'm interested in robotics, like what it's going to mean for, self-driving cars, robots in houses. Those types of things are sci-fi that might become reality. At the moment, what you'd have is a robot in your house to stack your dishwasher slower and worse than you ever would. Do you know what I mean? But it would still be interesting to have.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just an absolute waste of,
Have you by any chance been watching that video from Figure AI? By any chance, have you seen that one?
I haven't. I probably haven't. Yeah. I probably haven't seen the exact one, but I've probably seen about 100 like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very good at stacking, doing the dishes and stacking the dishwashing. But yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I stopped your train of thought. But yeah, I think I'm in similar lines to you, because I'm really excited in autonomy in vehicles, mainly for the safety aspect and also the extra leisure time we get, and what robotics can do mixed with AI, which we've not had the luxury of that in the past. So as long as we get the dexterity right and the actual engineering right, the robotics right, which I think is hard, but not as hard as the neural net, merging that together over the next few years, who knows what's possible in industrial settings as well as home settings.
Do you know what? Like, yeah, industrial settings, it will revolutionize because they've finely tuned environments. But like you said, I mean, the neural nets, in honesty, are the easy part. Like reality is always the hard part. Like reality is the hard part. The reason robotics don't work is because they have to work in the real world. In simulation, they work perfectly. And they have done for years. In a simulated environment, a robot is way more efficient than a human. Put them in the real world, and they fall over within about 3 seconds usually. So that will be the final frontier. But with the engineering mindset tells us, and the reason all these companies just inherently are confident that they can solve these problems is if you break things down and isolate them, that problem is easier to solve, and those sub-solutions build up to the entire solution. So you don't need a robot that can do everything. You can have a very specialized car that only drives in city streets in the daytime or whatever, and that's still valuable. Like you don't have to solve the whole problem. You can chunk it up, and you can have one robot for stacking your dishwasher really slowly, one robot for washing your car. This sort of thing. But that is a much more realistic view of what the next few years is going to be until we make these quantum leaps. And what that does is dissolves all that, those are the scaffolding to solving the problem. A quantum leap just dissolves it all, because it's like, oh, you don't need all that scaffolding anymore. We're at this level. Like we can do it. We're not there. So that's what the next few years looks like for me.
The one thing I would say though is, healthcare is amazing, especially if you think about things like, wouldn't it be great to have a a humanoid type robot that was really good at healthcare in terms of personalized healthcare to give people dignity and to be there for people to keep them safe as well at the same time. That I think will be a complete game changer as well, in addition to other forms of healthcare too. But I think we're ways off that, but I think it's possible, to be quite frank.
It'd be exciting to see where it goes. And I think, yeah, you're right. I'm actually more excited for, it takes all of the other aspects of healthcare so that people are freed up to hang around each other more. Because the one thing I don't want is for people to subsidize their social needs with robots and robotics and ChatGPT, and because it's just going to be so easy to do. What we really want to do is free up the humans, have the robots in the offices, till late at night. The robots never see their kids, blah blah blah, they're just working, and the humans can all be freed up to just spend a bit more time together. And that's where we're really going to need to focus on the education system producing good citizens, people with self-awareness, people that want to add value in society rather than sort of whatever it's been producing for the last 20, 30 years, which I don't think that's been the focus. I think education system has got a big overhaul to come.
Great. Thanks, Chris. It's been a great time. Yeah, I've enjoyed it so much, and time has flown, to be honest, but the time has come to say thank you and goodbye. So it's been a pleasure, and hopefully catch up with you again next time.
Nice one. Cheers, Cliff. Best of luck. Cheers, mate.